Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, the spotlight is on the ad industry, and we look at opportunities for growth, the impact of social media and global trends, and innovations amongst other issues. Joining the discussion is the CEO of the Omnicom Group, Keith Wijesuriya. Next, we focus on the bourse, in particular capital markets, with LMD columnist Hasita Premaratna. And in our final segment, Anshari Pereira, the Senior Product Lead of Frontier Research, talks about the risks and challenges in the banking sector. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Benchmark. I am Savitri Rodrigo. On the program today, we focus on the advertising industry, and we're looking at the industry's opportunities for growth, the impact that social media has had, and also global trends and innovations that the local ad industry can use, and the numerous challenges that the industry is facing as of now. And to give us his perspective on these issues and more, we have the CEO of the Omnicom Media Group in Sri Lanka, Keith Wijesuriya. Keith, welcome. Good to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
How do you view Sri Lanka's advertising industry, the way it is right now?
Currently, I believe it is quite saturated with players. A lot of advertising agencies up there. There are hugely changing dynamics in terms of content as well as the kind of delivery, the formats you have. A lot of changes that are taking place in terms of what we would identify as creative back in the days, say 10-15 years ago, and what is content today is completely different. So that's basically a look at the industry as such.
Now, some of our Sri Lankan ad agencies were recognized at the Campaign South Asia Agency of the Year Awards 2018. We were award winners in the South Asia Creative Agency of the Year, Rest of South Asia Agency Creative Agency of the Year, Rest of South Asia Digital Agency of the Year, and Rest of South Asia Media Agency of the Year. So when you look at what some agencies have achieved and what the rest of the industry is like, how does the local advertising industry compare with that of other countries?
Okay, in terms of technology and new media, maybe less developed, maybe lagging behind in terms of that. But in terms of some other areas, like bringing innovation into how we would take the message out to our consumer, to our customer, I think we have also made great progress. Right? If you take approaching our rural market, you will find that the kind of things that have been done. Take for example, how we take the message out through activation, where we take the message out into areas which are sometimes not reached by traditional media, and the way we take that message out in that area, I think we have done we have carved our own little dish, our own roads. But in terms of overall, I think that's why you just mentioned Rest of South Asia. That's why they have a category called Rest of South Asia. We find it that much harder to compete with the big boys on that level, and very few agencies have really made it to that level of awards.
Keith, we are talking about innovation and putting messages out, but when it comes to creativity, the nucleus of the advertising industry, how do our agencies compare with other countries?
Okay, that's a bit of a tricky question. In terms of creativity, we tend to follow what happens out there. We tend to learn from our counterparts out there. We have our creativity. If we are to do a local creative, obviously using our local languages, we will then be the people who create. And our creations in the local language, I find, are much better than when we try to create in English. When we try to create in English, we tend to ape or copy what's out there. And in doing so, sometimes we fall short. Right? There is some stuff which is cringeworthy and some stuff which is decent stuff. But I think we should be focusing on our message, because we are talking to our people. We are not trying to bring in a foreign kind of creative out here, and that's where we sometimes go wrong. But having said that, our people are quite capable of delivering content which is equal, if not better, than what's out there, because some of our people have actually been part of global teams, regional teams, creative teams, and we have brought our thinking and our ideas also to the table.
What is the role that your client plays in actually accepting your creative concepts and being aware of what is happening around?
It's a key role that he plays, because obviously he signs the check at the end of the day and he signs off on the material. For him to do that, he firstly has to be brave, be bold, be prepared to go into that unknown area on the creative side, not unknown where his product is concerned. Give that agency that he's working with also the leeway to do what is best for his brand, and trust them enough for them to deliver on that. Even though we know about those creatives and we want to embrace them, cost will also come in the way. We are a small market, so spending massive millions on those things may not really justify it.
What are the opportunities for growth that you see in the ad industry?
The short, easy answer is digital and online. There is a lot of growth there. I think those from a media agency perspective that I come from, if you were to change from being a media buyer to a more comm specialist, I think that's where the growth is. People are not really looking at, there is only so much you can do with negotiations and bringing down the cost of advertising. You need to actually come up with ways and means of reaching your client in more creative, more innovative ways.
According to the central bank, the internet penetration in the country, 2017 figure, has increased by 18.6%, and the Minister of Industry and Commerce, Rishad Batudin, recently said that 25% of Sri Lankans are estimated to be using social media, which includes Facebook. So how has social media actually impacted the reach of Sri Lankan companies?
Okay, social media has quite revolutionized some companies. If it's a mass brand, not so much, because the majority still haven't got online as such, right? Or they are online for different reasons. But if you take a niche brand, say take for example a brand like a cake manufacturer, right? Take SITS for example. I don't think she spent 1 cent on advertising as such, but she has used social, she has used digital, word of mouth, which is, as you know, the most powerful form of advertising, to build her brand, right? And there are lots of people, lots of cafes, lots of little boutique restaurants that have really grown purely through the digital online space. So with causes, if somebody wants to take on something, you find that little thing. If you want an environmental cause where you want to bring, let's say, steel straws or bamboo straws instead of plastic straws, those little organizations or those little initiatives have really prospered purely through digital and social media. Take the message out. So if it's a niche, if it's a smaller focused market, yes, social media has played a big role, almost a singular role. If it is a mass market brand, maybe not so much. The times are ahead.
What are the global trends and innovations that you see that local companies can use?
There are trends that are taking place now in terms of shorter duration creatives. Gone are the days of the 30-second and the 45-second commercials that we used to all love. Today, people are now experimenting with getting their message out in just the 5 seconds. You know that famous skip ad on YouTube lasts 5 seconds. So people are waiting for those 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to skip the ad. So if you can say your message in those 5 seconds, you have achieved your objective. Right? So it is a bit of a tough ask from the creatives who are used to bringing all these their stuff to the table, in terms of the camera angles and all those kind of things. Today it's more of a hard selling, hard hitting kind of messaging, where people today don't have that much time to spend languidly in front of a box watching these beautiful commercials roll out. Right? So you have to grab their attention it's all about how you can bring that focus in that first few seconds of the time that they have kind of lent to you.
Well, we've got some very new perspectives on the ad industry thus far. We'll continue this, Keith. Thank you. And after that commercial break. So after the break, we speak with Keith and ask him to assess the local ad industry's ability to cater to international clients and compete on a global scale. And we also discuss the scope for growth of digital advertising here in Sri Lanka. Do stay with us.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal. LMD podcast now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
$8,500 done. 1,500 to go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Thank you for staying with Benchmark. We now resume our discussion on the ad industry with Keith Wijesuriya, the CEO of the Omnicom Group here in Sri Lanka. Keith, what is your assessment? I mean, we've been talking a lot about what the local ad industry can give and how they compete with other countries. But what is the local industry's ability to cater to international clients, given that we are also seeing more MNCs coming and setting up, more sort of larger international organizations setting up here? So how can they, what is their ability to cater to these international clients and compete on a global scale?
Okay, if you look at the people here, if you look at the agencies here, there are quite a few multinational agencies as well, MNC agencies as well. Now, their people have been going out and been part of, like I said earlier, global creative processes and contributing to the whole thing that way, right? Bringing their talents to the table. Putting that aside, if you take digital production and stuff like that, we can offer a lot to our regional officers or the regional agencies in terms of our load costs. Right? So that's another area that we can explore, where we can take on work, create them here or produce them here and then export it or re-export it out to the region.
And on the other side of the coin, what are the key challenges that face our industry?
Talent. And on the other side, or something that actually works with that, is the shrinking budgets that people spend on advertising. So you've heard of the old adage, throw peanuts, you hire monkeys. So we are unable to bring in good talent into the industry because they have been offered much better prices either outside the country or in other areas of focus. So we need to get youth into the industry. They are the ones who will carve those new digital spaces for us. They are the ones who understand and who are actually right now on par with their counterparts in the West. Because digital doesn't have the boundaries that we had in the old analog days. Now, what happens here is that if you can't afford those young people, because they know their worth, and they are looking for people who can respect and accept that worth. And if we are not prepared to pay that, they'll be looking for people who can.
Do you think there is sufficient focus on ethics in advertising? The Ipsos Mori Veracity Index says that in the UK, the least trusted professional are ad industry professionals. So, I mean, let's look in general. What is the focus on ethics?
See, ethics, if you look at ethics from the harsher meaning of the word, in terms of are we undercutting each other or are we trying to mess around with each other's areas, that too may be a bit of a point to be discussed at a later stage, but it is definitely a discussable point. In terms of the ethics of how we do business, by and large, most agencies do look at the source of what they are going to advertise and make sure that they get the facts right. In fact, in this day and age where there is a lot of opportunities for people to actually sue companies or through social media, bring it out so that the general audience can realize that they have done some small, shall I call it, a Jill Mart on their advertising message. People are now a little more circumspect. They will check their facts and figures before they advertise. But I don't know whether we have that rigorous a way of reporting something which is false or wrongly advertised. In that sense, I don't know whether there is enough of a emphasis on that.
How much of control or monitoring is there of what goes out into the public?
Control is always done at an in-house agency level. Right? So clients will obviously, they are placing their signature on something, they'll want to make sure it's correct. Agencies place their name on it, they want to make sure it's correct. I'm not a great believer in external control in terms of having agencies to control that whole thing, because we all know that with control everything goes underground. You know? But I believe that in today's day and age, you cannot spin yarns, you cannot weave stories and get away with it if it's false. We will quickly be exposed, and there is no harsher way of being exposed than on social media today.
So as a final question, Keith, what do you expect to see from the advertising industry in the next year?
Two things. One thing, I expect to see the introduction of newer technology. I believe that if we want to remain relevant, we have to focus a lot on our content-driven communication, rather than content which is applicable to the consumer, not what we think should be dished out as such. And being aware that we need to listen more to what's happening out there, because today, unlike in the good old days when you had a message and you pushed the message out, today conversations on your brand, on your product is taking place without your knowledge. It's happening out there, and the best you can hope for is for somebody to tell you that there is such a conversation taking place. It's like you have the party, you organize the hall, but you may not be invited for the party, right? So they are out in there either bashing or saying good things about your product, and you need to be constantly aware that those conversations are taking place out there, and do you have your ear out for those? So I would hope that people spend more time listening rather than speaking.
Well, that's a good place to start, I guess.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Keith. Good talking to you.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with the CEO of the Omnicom Group here in Sri Lanka, Keith Wijesuriya, on the advertising industry, the challenges it faces, the new trends and innovations coming up, and also how the local ad industry is going to work towards becoming more competitive. On the other side, we have Anushan Selvarajan.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
$8,500 done. 1,500 to go. Hoorah!
What on earth are you doing?
I'm making money.
You're crazy.
Crazy for money. 10,000 steps done. Who the man? I do it every single day. Show me the money.
So you run 10,000 steps every day, huh? You must be fit.
Some days I do 20,000. Hoorah!
Hello and welcome back to Benchmark. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on the bourse. Joining me is market analyst and LMD columnist Hasita Premratne. Welcome back to the show, Hasita. Now start off with just tell us how are capital markets performing right now?
Yeah, 2019 have been pretty slow compared to one's expectation. Obviously, the all share price index was down almost 60 points, and average daily turnover levels dropped to about 577 million rupees, which naturally has been contributed by the political climate in the country as well as in the global front. The investors in general have been taking a relatively subdued wait-and-see approach, generally a time when fresh money comes into the market, but this time around it has not been the case. In the meantime, foreigners have been net sellers to the tune of 2.3 billion rupees, which is quite a sizable number, and foreign sales have been continuing since October, where we've seen for the 4th consecutive month the foreigners have been on the net sales side, reversing the trend which was available in the previous year.
In terms of investments, Hasita, what segments would you say are the weakest?
Yeah, right now with the economic condition and the growth rates being relatively low at 3.5% levels, we've seen clearly a consumption drop, which has impacted most of the FMCG companies. If you look at the Nestle's, if you look at Hema's consumer, if you look at the other retail areas, even SoftLogic for that matter, have got significantly impacted by the slowdown in the consumption in the retail market. So FMCG is a clear problem area right now, and in the meantime, importers in general also have got hammered because those who have, especially the imports coming into the country and they sell in the local market, people like SoftLogic, we've seen a substantial hit in their P&L. Even we saw the Dialog profits fall in because they have quite a bit of foreign income or foreign expense that they have for TV, etc., which they actually sell back in rupees. So when the rupee depreciated almost 20% within a period of 3 to 4 months, it did have a unbearable impact to the P&Ls because they could not pass on the cost. But I would expect that these companies will gradually start passing on in these few months, which will obviously have an impact on the consumer rates and the inflation. But having said that, I think the immediate impact has been seen in the importers as well.
Now, is this performance of our stock market a reflection of our economy as well?
To an extent, yes. I think we've seen clearly the results and the share prices of some of the companies on these industries, in particular FMCG and in the importer side, having this particular implication. But having said that, I think the CAC doesn't represent the wider economy at large. I mean, there is a lot of sectors, including apparel, have not been really reflected in the market properly. So I would think that there is a certain element of reflection, and investors are sort of selling, looking at the potential earnings drop in selected sectors in the coming 2 quarters. But having said that, on the positive side of the story, that we've also seen that the construction side picking up, and we've seen a lot of large scale projects going through and taking towards completion this year, which again is not reflected obviously in the market. And in the meantime, most construction companies are complaining that the government is not paying them on time. So that's also something that trickles down right down to the wire, because most of these construction companies employ the day-to-day workers who live on their daily wages, so that when they don't get their cash flows going, naturally there is an impact on the consumption level in the economy.
Thank you for joining us, Hasita.
Thank you.
That was market analyst and LM economist Hasita Prema. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushin Selvaraja. Now we're going to take a look at the banking sector and the challenges that it will face going forward. So joining me from Frontier Research is Senior Product Lead Anshari Pereira. Welcome to the show, Anshari. Now, just to start us off, tell us, how did the banking sector perform in 2018?
2018 was actually somewhat of a challenging year for the banking sector. Talking about the operating environment that they were operating in, the sluggish GDP growth was a factor that affected the banking sector as well as other sectors. On the other hand, the central bank did signal that they were loosening their stance of the monetary policy tightening that they were following in 2016 and 17. And we did see policy rates increasing during the year, but at the same time, the statutory reserve ratio was also reduced, signaling that they were moving on to a more neutral stance. In terms of the profits or the performance of the banks, starting off with the credit growth, we did see a period of very high credit growth in 2016 and 17. But actually this is 2015 and 16. In 2017, this growth moderated, and in 2018 also the slowdown continued. And in the first 3 quarters of 2018, we saw an year-on-year growth of credit of about 15% on average. In terms of profitability, there was the net interest margins that increased slightly in the first 3 quarters of 2018. But despite this increase, there was an increase in provisioning costs incurred by banks as well as tax increases that sort of weighed down on the profitability of the banks.
So what are the challenges that the sector could face going forward?
One of the major risks is, of course, what's been talked about a lot, the NPL ratios. Speaking about the NPL ratios, in 2017, the ratio stood at about 2.5%, this increased to about 3.6% in 2018 third quarter. Of course, the fourth quarter results are still being released at the moment, and we will be able to see at the end of around this month where it actually stands for the full year. Speaking of another thing that has been highlighted is the reschedulement of loans. According to the data that has been released by the central banks, the year-on-year growth of rescheduled loans, which was about below 15% in 2017, saw a rapid increase in 2018. And in June 2018, it was at about 45%. So banks would have to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to this area and be a bit more prudent because these rescheduled loans could eventually turn into non-performing loans in the future.
Is there any validity to the concerns about the rising NPLs in the construction sector?
Well, of course, the real estate sector is something that has been discussed a lot in 2018, and with that came the discussion about the NPLs related to this sector. Looking at the data, the sector-wise NPLs doesn't really highlight the construction sector because there are other sectors that have recorded higher NPLs, like for example the agriculture or the tourism sector in 2017 as well as up to August 2018. But despite that though, that the exposure of construction loans of the entire lending portfolio of commercial banks has been on the rise over the years. From 2012 at 13%, it has increased to about 20% in 2018. So this is something that the banks will have to be mindful about, especially since the banks themselves have expressed that they have seen these delays coming from construction related loans. So that would be something that they would need to be prudent about and be a little bit more cautious when lending into these sectors. And the banks have already said that they are taking these measures when it comes to this sector.
Thank you very much for joining us, Anshari.
Thank you.
That was Anshari Pereira, Senior Product Lead at Frontier Research. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.